we are committed to advancing the rights and opportunities of low-income immigrants. The National Immigration Law Center has been honored to serve as a co-lead of the No Muslim Ban Ever campaign alongside our core partners at Asian Americans Advancing Justice Asian Law Caucus, the Council on American Islamic Relations of San Francisco Bay Area, and Empower Change, as well as the 200+ organizations that have endorsed the campaign. Since those middle-of-the-night hours after the first version of the ban was issued back in January 2017, NILC has fought alongside leaders in the Muslim, Arab, South Asian, and Middle Eastern communities, serving the most directly impacted communities that have been at the forefront of fighting policies that have targeted them long before the Trump administration and gravely worsened with Trump in office. Today marks 1 year since the Supreme Court issued a final ruling in Trump versus Hawaii, which has allowed Trump's Muslim ban to remain permanently in effect. This third iteration of the ban blocks most people from the Muslim-majority countries of Iran, Libya, Somalia, Syria, and Yemen, as well as people from North Korea and certain government officials in Venezuela. All of them are blocked from coming to the U.S. on immigrant or non-immigrant visas. Last year's Supreme Court ruling, 1 year ago today, relied on the grave miscalculation that the ban would be temporary, that it would be subject to regular review, and that it would allow for a humane, generous, and functioning waiver system. But we know then, as we know now, that this decision will serve as a stain on the court's record. A year later, we know the toll of this permanent ban on so many communities, including my own as an Iranian American, which has been truly devastating. And every day, families, including those of U.S. citizens, are cruelly separated and opportunities are lost. But we keep fighting the ban, still in the courts and in Congress. And that's why I'm honored to be here today with some of our champions in Congress who have helped introduce bills that would defund the ban, as well as the No Ban Act, which currently has 136 co-sponsors in the House, thanks to the leadership of Representative Judy Chu, as well as 34 co-sponsors in the Senate, thanks to the leadership of Senator Coons. We've also seen efforts to demand more oversight and accountability with regular reporting to Congress. Thank you to Senator Van Hollen for pushing for that, and to so many other members who will be holding hearings and holding this government accountable for the effects of the ban. So it's an honor to be with you all today with so many of our champions in Congress and in our communities to highlight this painful anniversary. With that, I'd like to introduce Representative Judy Chu of California's 27th Congressional District, who's also chairwoman of the Asian Pacific American Caucus. Thank you.
1 year ago, the Supreme Court ruled that Donald Trump had the right to ban entire groups of people because of their religion. Well, if he has a right, then we have a responsibility. We have a responsibility to fight back against bigotry, a responsibility to end the hateful Muslim ban, and a responsibility to ensure that no other president can do this again. And that's why I have introduced the No Ban Act in the House. We have to do this because of people like Kadi, who lives in my home state of California. Kadi was born and raised in the U.S., but because of the Muslim ban, she's been separated from her husband for 2 years, even though she has applied for a visa. That's 2 years of memories that they have been unable to make together, 2 years of a life together that they have been unable to live. And all because of Donald Trump's bigoted attacks on Muslims or people from Muslim countries. And they're not alone. I hear stories every day from Americans reaching out to tell me they've been unable to see their spouse for years. And the one constant is how sad and worried they are for their partner or for their family member. Marriage is supposed to be till death do us part, not till Donald Trump do us part. But it's not just spouses. I'm hearing from parents unable to see their children and brilliant students unable to pursue better opportunities. And that's why the No Ban Act is so important. I have introduced it in the House, and Senator Coons has introduced it in the Senate. And now this bill has over 150 co-sponsors in both the House and the Senate. It will repeal all three versions of President Trump's Muslim ban and reclaim some of Congress's authority over our immigration laws. If a president wants to ban a group from the country, they would need to demonstrate that there's an actual legitimate reason for it and credible facts to support it. This justification is key because Trump's Muslim ban is built on fear and not on credible facts. And now that Democrats have taken back the House, we believe that we will actually be able to get a vote on it out of the House. The Muslim ban is not who we are. It makes America less safe, endangers the lives of refugees who seek safety here, and tarnishes our reputation in the world. It has nothing to do with national security and everything to do with instilling fear of the Muslim community. And that's why we are going to be the ones that end it.
I'm not sure whose this is, but if you wanted to position it just so it picks up all the sound, thank you. Okay, great. Thank you so much, Congresswoman Chu. I'd now like to introduce Senator Van Hollen of Maryland, who, as I mentioned before, has been a true champion in fighting to make sure that Congress is given transparency and accountability and regular information about the dysfunctional waiver system. So with that, I'll introduce Senator Van Hollen. Thank you.
All right, thank you. Well, thank you, Avita, and thank you for all your good work and all the groups represented here. It's good to be with Congressman Chu and with Ami Bera and others as we gather today on the one-year anniversary of a disgraceful decision at the Supreme Court, a decision to discriminate against a group of people based on religion, the Muslim ban, which grossly violates what this country stands for. We're a country that was built on the idea of religious freedom and religious liberty, the idea that people could come to this country from all over the world, different backgrounds, different races, different ethnicities, different religions. And the court decision put a dagger into that idea. And I just want to quote from two of the justices, Justices Sotomayor and Ginsburg, who said, and I quote, "It leaves undisturbed a policy first advertised openly and unequivocally as a, quote, total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States, because the policy now masquerades behind a facade of national security concerns." Those two justices had it exactly right. This is a policy that the candidate Trump talked about during the campaign. He talked about a Muslim ban, and it doesn't matter how many times you try to launder this through the wash, it still has the stench of bigotry. And that's why we're gathered together to make sure we fight on a number of fronts. First of all, we have to keep the fight going in the court, because this was masquerading as a national security concern, and the information that we've gotten since the court decision reveals what a farce it was, because we put amendments into the appropriations bill requiring the Trump administration to provide us information about how this ban has been implemented. And it turns out that only 5% of applicants have received waivers under this law, which just shows that it was a fraudulent claim that this was something about national security. This was not about national security. This was about discrimination against one group, and that's unacceptable. So I'm pleased that a Maryland court is allowing a new case to go forward with the additional information, as are other courts. We're also fighting it legislatively. with two efforts. One is the legislation to end the ban, and the other is an effort to defund the ban. And we will keep pushing on all fronts until we end this stain on our democracy and our values. And so as we gather to think about the families who are separated now, parents in the United States, children overseas, sometimes children overseas, parents here in the United States, people just wanting to reunite with their families, we need to rededicate ourselves to ending this gross violation of American values and American principles. And I thank all of you for being part of that effort, and I'm confident that in time we will overcome. And I now will turn it over to someone who's been a real leader on efforts to make sure the United States stands up for its values, and that means fighting discrimination in all its forms. Ami Bera from the state of California.
Well, it is great to partner with leaders like Representative Chu and Senator Van Hollen on this. We think about what happened 1 year ago when the Supreme Court upheld the third version of Trump's Muslim ban. In that ruling, the Supreme Court, critical to that decision, was that there would be a waiver process. And in that waiver process, a person, as long as they didn't show they were a security threat, as long as they demonstrated that not allowing them to get that visa would cause undue hardship, and showing that they had significant ties. Well, in the years since that Supreme Court ruling, the Trump administration has absolutely failed to follow that process. Let's put a human face on it. When I think about the Muslim ban, the travel ban, I think about one of my constituents, a little girl, a 2-year-old named Omnia. She was born in Libya to a Libyan American resident, a citizen of the United States. That mom wanted to bring her daughter with her back to the Sacramento region. She went to Tunis, to the consular section, 90-second interview, and she was told, you know what, you're gonna have to leave your daughter here. She was 7 months pregnant. They said, go back to America, have your baby, and then when the travel ban's over, you can come back and pick up your daughter. Now ask me, is a 2-year-old a security risk? No. Does that 2-year-old child have a compelling reason to be with her mother and father? Absolutely. Now, what was the process? As far as we can tell, there was no process. Now, I'm happy to say that Omnia was reunited after 9 months with her mother and father in Sacramento. But the trauma on that little girl, I met with them in my office a few weeks ago. She's having issues bonding with her mother. Is that who we are as the United States of America? No, it's not who we are. It's not what we represent. But under this administration, that's who we're becoming. You look at the tragic circumstances at the southern border. That's not who we are. We need to fight this. And in my role as chairman on the House Subcommittee on Oversight for the House Foreign Affairs Committee, we have jurisdiction over the consular section of the State Department. We want to know how many applications are being submitted, what countries they're being submitted from, how many applications are being approved. We also want to know why the applications that aren't being approved are being denied. We're going to hold this administration accountable because of the values of the United States, and it is time that Congress stepped up and held the administration accountable. As far as I can tell, there is no process by which to give approval. The cases, when I talk to my colleagues, and this is happening at districts all across this country, it is only when the media gets involved, et cetera, and the administration's going to be embarrassed that you kind of got some movement here. You're talking about, mothers and daughters wanting to see their children, grandparents. This is not who we are. We need to step up. We will be working with the Judiciary Committee. We will be shining a spotlight on this heinous policy. It is not who we are as the United States of America. I want to thank the advocacy groups. I want to thank the legal groups that are helping us fight this. And this is a team effort to restore the values that built this country. So thank you for being here, and thank you for fighting the fight. Let's ban the ban.
It is now a huge honor for me to introduce one of our fiercest champions in Congress, someone who knows deeply and personally the impacts of the ban on her own community. Representative Ilhan Omar of Minnesota's 5th Congressional District is the first Somali American woman to serve in Congress and one of the first 2 Muslim women elected to Congress. It means so much to have her leadership, and we so look forward to her continued advocacy and fierce advocacy in holding this administration accountable. As a member of the House Foreign Affairs Committee, she has been such a wonderful advocate on this issue, and it's an honor to have her here this morning. Thank you.
Well, good morning, everyone. I joined my colleagues in saying no ban to the ban. For me, this has been really a personal issue since I have gotten elected to the Minnesota House. It was nearly 3 weeks after my swearing in that this ban went into effect. And people will say this is a travel ban. Ilhan, don't call it a Muslim ban. But what we do know is that it was a campaign promise by the president that said that we were going to have a complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States. So we know this is a Muslim ban. When we're thinking about the kind of damage this particular discriminatory policy has had on our country, we think about the mothers from Yemen who are unable to join their children at a hospital by their dying bed. We think about the aunties who are unable from Iran who are unable to attend a wedding. We think about the families who are being deeply impacted. I also think a lot about the little Ilhans who are lingering in refugee camps, who are now realizing that this particular Muslim ban is also being applied within our refugee policies. Since 2016, the refugee entry program for the countries on the Muslim ban has decreased by 91%. So we know that there are no visa waivers being granted to people from any of the countries on the Muslim ban. We know that refugees are not being processed from the countries on the refugee ban. We know that this xenophobic policy is instigating fear and violence within the Muslim community. So what we are saying is that this policy that is going to be a stain on our history once for all needs to end. And I am really excited to have the opportunity, not only as a Somali American serving in the Congress, but as someone who has a mother who has a family who's from Yemen. I recognize deeply how both of those communities are impacted as I talk to my relatives on a daily basis on this issue. And so I am honored to have colleagues who understand how devastating this policy has been for our communities, how devastating it is for a lot of Americans who have relatives in these countries. And I am completely honored to stand here with so many advocates who understand when our civil liberties are being threatened, we must unite forces to fight back. When particular people are being banned from this country, we need to band and stand together. When little kids are being put in cages in our border, we need to band and stand together. This administration has now had a long history of discriminating against minorities, of discriminating against the LGBT community, of discriminating against Muslims, of discriminating against many people who they do not see as being part of the American fabric. This country was founded on the ideals of celebrating diversity. You are not an American because you look a particular way, you pray a particular way. You are an American because we collectively share a value of inclusivity, of prosperity, of liberty. And so we're here to say, in this country, we are no longer going to stand for a xenophobic tyrant to continuously rain terror on our communities. Thank you so much.
Thank you again, Congresswoman Omar, for your leadership on this issue. Hello, everyone. My name is Donna Farvard. I am the organizing director for the National Iranian American Council. So, as we all know, the Muslim ban has been tearing families apart since day one, and Iranians are one of the most heavily impacted communities by this ban. In fact, 56% of those impacted by the Muslim ban are Iranian nationals. And we've seen in that time students unable to obtain visas to study in the United States. We've seen fiancés separated from their spouses-to-be. And we've even seen mothers denied entry into the U.S. to see their expecting daughters right before they give birth. And as we stand here on the one-year anniversary of the Supreme Court's decision to uphold the Muslim ban, we have to remember that the rationale and the premise for why they upheld the ban, the waiver process, is an absolute sham. And all you need to do is look at the numbers. So, an example, between February and March of this year, only 5.6% of Iranian nationals who were denied a visa received a waiver. And it's important to remember that these numbers and statistics are actual people. So I want to take this time to share the story of someone that I've gotten to know a bit this past year, named Jessica Breishwert Monfared. So Jessica was born and raised in the U.S. She is a teacher at Ivymont School in Rockville, Maryland, where she's taught history and English for the past 11 years. And she also teaches a free ESL class on the weekends, English as a second language. One day, two of her students came up to her and started talking to her about their son Puya, who was getting his PhD in Spain. Eventually, she and Puya started talking, they met in Spain, and fell in love, and decided to get married in Denmark soon after because Puya could not receive a visa to get married in the United States. And because they got married in Denmark, none of the parents could come visit because Puya's parents are in the middle of getting their citizenship in the US, and Jessica's parents didn't have passports. Soon after they got married, in April of last year, Jessica filed for a CR1 visa for Puya. And 1 year later, April 3rd of 2019, Puya finally had his interview in Madrid and was ultimately denied because of the ban. The consular officer told him that it would be many months before anything would be resolved. So Jessica saves up all of her money and her vacation days to go visit her husband in Spain. And while they wait for an undefined number of months to be reunited in the US, their lives are completely on hold. They can't start looking for a new home in Maryland, they can't start building a family together, and they can't start their lives as a married couple. This is just one of hundreds of stories we've heard from our community over the past 2 years. Donald Trump made the Muslim ban a priority when he came into the office in 2017. It was one of his first actions as President of the United States, fulfilling a campaign promise of a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the U.S. While the Supreme Court may not have righted this injustice and take action last year, Congress still has the opportunity to step up and show impacted communities that this xenophobic policy is not the status quo of the United States and is not tolerated. That's why I am proud to say that Judy Chu and Senator Coons introduced the No Ban Act, and we're so grateful for their leadership on this issue. And I'd also like to thank all of the co-sponsors of those bills who spoke today and their leadership as well. We have to make sure that the rest of Congress follows suit and co-sponsors these bills to really show that when our immigrants are under attack, this country does step up and welcome them with open arms and takes action to fight, again, these xenophobic, Islamophobic policies. Thank you.
All right, good morning, everybody. My name is Darakshan Raja. I'm the co-director of Justice for Muslims Collective. We're an organization that works to dismantle, structure, and institutionalize Islamophobia. I'm here today because a year ago, when we were right outside the Supreme Court, the court decided to uphold the Muslim ban. By upholding the Muslim ban, unfortunately, they decided to uphold what has been a legacy in this country, which is particularly of white supremacy, using citizenship to police who is a citizen and who is not, who belongs and who does not, who is considered human and who is not. As the ban currently stands, it impacts 200 million people in the world. And if we look at it 100 years ago, in 1917, this same country actually upheld the 1917 Immigration Act that barred folks from the Asiatic zones. 100 years later, we're still here using the same logics of xenophobia, of nativism, of white supremacy to say that certain people are a threat to this country's safety. But the question that I have is, whose safety are we talking about, and whose safety is built upon the dehumanization of other communities? So therefore, it is really important that not only do we continue the fight to get rid of this ban, but also with it, the larger legacy of white supremacy and also xenophobia in the country. As we stand right now, there are refugees, children who are asylum seekers who are being detained in detention facilities and are being tortured. At the same time, we have a prison called Guantanamo Bay that has been open from 2001. And so we can't call in this legacy again of criminalization of our communities without talking about the entire infrastructure of criminalization of immigrant communities, of people of color. Because again, over and over again, we have seen that there have been periods where citizenship in particular has been restricted to only a certain people in this country in order to depopulate, in order to make sure that when people say make America great again, what they're really saying is make America white again. So we must continue to fight. We must continue to make sure that we support impacted communities, because at the end of the day, as you can see, we're a year out and there are only a few people here, even though when the ban was initially passed, people stormed the airports. It's important that we continue this fight, because at the end of the day, as many of us are awaiting the horrible census decision from the court, we know that the logics used to uphold the Muslim ban by the court are going to be applied to other cases as well. So please support the No Ban Act, continue to mobilize, continue to support impacted communities, continue to understand that it's not going to be just one of us, it's going to be all of us. And as we say at Justice for Muslims Collective, we are our best defense. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. My name is Dr. Debbie Almantasser. I am one of the co-founders of the Yemeni American Merchants Association, which was actually birthed out of the famous bodega strike and shutdown of 1,000 stores in New York City, followed by a rally of 6,000 Yemeni Americans and resistance to the ban. This organization has been the saving grace for the Yemeni American community, not only in New York City, but also nationally, as an organization fighting for their rights as immigrants who have been banned by the Muslim ban under this administration. As I walked over onto this plaza and I started to look at these pictures, I became very emotional, not because I forgot that the Muslim ban is indefinite, but it made those feelings even more raw for me as a Yemeni American to have to see my community and communities from the other banned countries live with this in a country that was actually founded on religious freedom. The picture at the far end was actually a picture of a rally that the Yemeni American Merchants Association held when 300 Yemeni American family members received visas in December of 2017 and within 24 hours received rejection letters. That was one of the coldest days of the year, but families from across the eastern region of the United States came out, young and old, again to demand justice for their families. I am so pained when we have clients coming in to the Yemeni American Merchants Association and telling us of their stories. And I want to tell you of one story that we've yet to be able to help this family. The story is of Abu Hisham. Abu Hisham is 80 years old. He has a heart condition. He has his 3 sons living in the United States as American citizens. He and his wife are American citizens, and sadly his wife passed away 2 years ago. He and his wife have been trying to bring their adult daughter to the United States, where they petitioned for her over 6 years ago, prior to the Muslim ban. Their daughter was this close to being able to enter into the United States, and the Muslim ban interrupted her administrative processing. Sadly, their daughter did not get a chance to see her mother before she passed away, and she herself experienced loss. Her husband died while they were waiting to come to the United States, and now she is still in Djibouti with orphans and awaiting to come to the United States. And every time I see Abu Hisham, her father, all he says to me is, please bring my daughter. I don't want my daughter to lose her father as well and not get to say goodbye to him like her mother. These are the stories. These are the people that are affected. Law-abiding, peace-loving people who just want a better life for themselves and their children. And every time that I see Abu Hisham, I feel so helpless because I don't know what else we could possibly do. And so I am so proud to stand with congressional leaders and senators and national organizations who've been working to repeal the ban and making sure that the No Ban Act gets passed to ensure that every family, whether they are in Djibouti or in the southern border of the United States, are reunited, because I believe, and we all believe, that families belong together. And we will not tolerate family separation, and we will not tolerate racist and bigoted legislation that further divides our country and puts our country in a negative position on an international level. So I thank you all for being here. The fight continues. We are going to make sure that the No Ban Act get passed, and we could only do it with your support to make it happen for all the families that deserve to be reunited. Thank you.
Hi, my name is Manar Waheed, and I'm Senior Legislative and Advocacy Counsel with the ACLU. It's hard for me to believe that it's been a year since the Supreme Court issued their unjust decision on the Muslim ban, issuing a decision that will go down in history as one of their biggest failures, betraying Muslims, immigrants, families, as well as the equality and freedom that we so desire America to embody. As a result, Muslims are banned from America. Families are separated, People are denied life-saving healthcare treatment. Others are prevented from seeking opportunities that they would be eligible for otherwise. And the Trump administration, empowered by the Supreme Court's ruling, later used the same authority to issue a ban against asylum seekers, pushing forward more hateful and discriminatory policies. Fortunately, we have two other branches of government, and both of them have the authority to end this ban. Congress, of course, is one of them. In April, Representative Chu and Senator Coons introduced legislation to end these bans, all three bans: the Muslim ban, refugee ban, and the asylum ban. Their bill would change the law as well to prevent discriminatory bans in the future. It would set a more stringent standard for the use of this power under immigration law. It would establish a system of checks and balances, and it would prohibit presidents from using rank prejudice against a religion in lieu of individualized consideration in our visa process. The other obvious branch of government that could end these bans is the executive branch. And it just so happens that today is the first primary debate for the 2020 elections. Today, on the anniversary of the Supreme Court's decision on the Muslim ban. 10 candidates will debate tonight, another 10 candidates will debate tomorrow, and yet only a handful of these candidates have committed to ending the bans on day one. Don't let them get away with not acknowledging this day and making a commitment. We can ask them questions in forums and town halls. We can ask them questions on social media. Today is a day where we can put them, we can tweet at them, we can demand accountability, and we can remind them that this is important to us, to the American people, to Congress, and we can make them make a commitment. Because if we don't hold them accountable, who will?
Assalamu alaikum. Greetings of peace. My name is Robert McCaw. I'm the National Government Affairs Director with the Council on American Islamic Relations. I'm proud to join you, my fellow members of the No Muslim Ban Ever Coalition and members of Congress, to highlight the plight of families still separated by the Trump administration's Muslim ban. 1 year ago today, the U.S. Supreme Court upheld Donald Trump's discriminatory Muslim ban. That day, hundreds of Americans rallied on the steps of the Supreme Court to protest that decision and to stand in solidarity with Muslims worldwide. While CAIR and its civil rights partners continue to challenge the Muslim ban in the courts, we're also litigating to obtain waivers for many families that have been inhumanely separated, even denied medical treatment because of the Muslim ban. One such case that exemplifies the suffering caused by the Muslim ban is that of Shamai Swileh. Shamai is a Yemeni mother who was prevented from visiting her dying 2-year-old American son Abdullah, who was receiving treatment in a California hospital. It wasn't until CAIR Sacramento filed a lawsuit and launched a massive media campaign that Shamai was able to obtain a visa and able to say goodbye to her son before he died. The Supreme Court's decision last year to let the Muslim ban remain in place was largely predicated on a case-by-case waiver process. People like Shamaya, who suffer undue hardships, should have been able to get a waiver and not need to go through a legal fight. Her application was ignored for a year, and by the time the State Department finally issued a waiver, her son Abdullah was no longer conscious. Cases like this show that the Muslim ban's waiver process is a sham. Recently released statistics by the State Department show that only 5% of waivers to the ban are actually granted. If the Supreme Court is willing to let the Muslim ban remain in effect, then it's up to Congress to repeal the ban and fix our broken immigration system so that no future president can do something like this ever again. And that's why I'm here, like many other organizations and the members of Congress that joined us, to raise awareness about the devastating impact of the Muslim ban and how important it is for Congress to pass the No Ban Act. And it will pass if all Americans who value the Constitution and its protections for civil and religious rights contact their elected representatives and urge them to adopt the No Ban Act. However, until the Muslim ban is repealed, CAIR will continue to fight on behalf of Muslim families being separated by the ban, and we will work to ensure that they rightfully are able to receive waivers. Thank you.
Good morning, everybody. My name is Bilal Askaryar. I work for Church World Service, or CWS. CWS is one of the 9 refugee resettlement agencies that works in tandem with the State Department to resettle refugees in the United States. Our organization has witnessed firsthand the impact of this administration's xenophobic policies and its signature one, the Muslim ban. We remember the day that this administration came into power with writing the campaign promises of instituting a total and complete shutdown of Muslims entering the United States, and not many days later they made good on that promise. Today we're here to mark the 3rd iteration of the administration's Muslim ban. Many call it a travel ban, but I'd like to remind you that over 90% of the people who are targeted by this ban are Muslim. And what that means is, a year ago today, when we rallied outside of the Supreme Court where the words equal justice before law are etched in marble, the Supreme Court failed to do its job to uphold the rights of all Americans and all people who are here in the United States jurisdiction because of the faith that they practice or the country that they come from. But we know, sadly, that in the United States history, what has been legal has not always been right. And so we are here today to say that the fight is not over. The fight didn't start when the Supreme Court allowed the Muslim ban. It started much longer before that, as my colleague Derek Shanraja of Justice for Muslims Collective said. It started when the Obama administration, or when the Bush administration instituted the NSEERS program, when we saw surveillance of our communities. And it's not going to end tomorrow or when the ban is repealed. Our organization, CWS, has seen firsthand the impact that this discriminatory ban has had on the most vulnerable people in the world. The 1% of refugees who find the life-saving option of resettlement have been directly impacted by this ban. The refugee resettlement program has been decimated by 75% because of the refugee ban, the asylum ban, and the Muslim ban. Working with CWS, I've had the pleasure and the privilege of working directly with one of those people who have been impacted. Afkab Hussein is a Somali man who lived 20 years in a refugee camp in Kenya. And when he was finally granted resettlement, a life-saving option to start a new life in the United States in Columbus, his legal advisors told him that it would be good for him to go to the United States by himself and leave his fiancée in Kenya and then apply for her to join him. Unfortunately, when his fiancée was cleared to come to the United States, the Muslim ban went into effect. That was 2.5 years ago now, and Afkab hasn't seen his wife, and he hasn't seen his 2.5-year-old son, Muhammad. The Muslim ban is in effect today, and it is tearing apart families just like it is tearing apart families at the border and across the United States. That is why it's important that we not work on these issues as if they were in a silo. The asylum ban, the attacks on Mexican Americans, on immigrants and asylum seekers who are coming to ask us for safety in the border are part and parcel of this administration's xenophobic policies, and that's why I'm honored to be here today with my coalition partners and fight against it. Thank you.
Good morning, everyone. My name is Hoda Hawa, and I'm the director of the Washington, D.C. office for the Muslim Public Affairs Council, MPAC. 2 years ago, fulfilling his campaign promise of banning Muslims from entering the country, President Trump signed an executive order undermining our American values and codifying his animus toward immigrants and Muslim communities under the auspices of legislative and legitimate governing. Whether separating families because of their faith or separating them at the border, the Muslim ban was the first of many policies grounded in a deeply xenophobic and exclusionary ideology and vision of America. 2 years ago, implementation of the ban was temporarily halted as a result of public outrage and the judicial branch acting as a check to the executive's discriminatory policy. We saw American Muslims and Americans of other faiths and no faith at airports in support of those who were impacted by the ban. The back and forth between the court striking down Muslim Ban 1.0 and 2.0 was a display of democracy in action and of our system of checks and balances that kept families together. While the fate of the ban was playing out in the courts, the ban itself impacted real lives. Families were unable to reunite, children were unable to see their parents and grandparents, and people seeking medical attention were denied entry into the United States. 1 year ago today, the Supreme Court of the United States ruled in favor of upholding the Muslim ban. Let our presence here today be clear. The Supreme Court's ruling isn't the end on this issue. The members of Congress who joined us here today, our allies and our partners in the No Muslim Ban Ever campaign, with us today are evidence that the Muslim ban was not going to end at the Supreme Court. Our coalitions of organizations have come together to re-strategize and work with Congress to defund and rescind the ban. Our champions and leaders in Congress have not only publicly opposed the Muslim ban with the power of their bully pulpit, but they've also sought legislative redress through the power of the legislative branch. In fact, earlier today, Congresswoman Judy Chu and many of our partners today mentioned the No Ban Act, and we encourage all of you to reach out to your members of Congress to ensure that they sponsor the No Ban Act and that we get that bill passed. This ban is important so that it can not only rescind the ban, but that it also ensures that no future president could implement a similar ban in the future. And when the media stopped covering the Muslim ban as attention was diverted to other issues equally as horrifying, we could still count on the leadership of the members of Congress who are with us today. Opposing the Muslim ban is working for the vision of an inclusive America, one that honors and recognizes diversity as our strength, one that recognizes the contributions of all communities, and one that doesn't turn her back on those who are fleeing from conflict or persecution. I want to thank all of our members who joined us today, our partners and our allies, and thank you all for joining us and sharing the work that they're doing in opposing the Muslim ban, and ensure that we continue to say, no Muslim ban ever. Thank you.
Good morning. I'm Bessie, and I'm the Assistant Director of Community Engagement at Asian Americans Advancing Justice, AAJC in DC. Rooted in the dreams of immigrants and inspired by the promise of opportunity, Advancing Justice, AAJC advocates for an America in which all Americans can benefit equally from and contribute to the American dream. Our mission is to advance civil and human rights for Asian Americans and build and promote a fair and equitable society for all. We work alongside our Asian Americans Advancing Justice affiliates in Atlanta, Chicago, Los Angeles, and San Francisco. Unfortunately, racist and xenophobic policies are not new to Asian American communities. From the Chinese Exclusion Act of 1882 to the unjust and inhumane incarceration of over 120,000 Japanese Americans during World War II, to the monitoring and surveillance of Arab, Muslim, and South Asian Americans after 9/11, our country has an unfortunate history of prejudicial laws that threaten this nation's founding ideals. Anti-Muslim sentiments and xenophobia are fanning the flames of fear and hatred, driving hateful white supremacist policies like the Muslim ban. The Asia-Pacific region is home to close to 2/3 of the world's Muslim population. In addition to the Muslim ban, the administration has initiated several enhanced vetting programs, such as the Form DS-5535, which is used to target Muslim visa applicants around the world. resulting in long delays and increased visa denials for Muslims. These policies, combined with other efforts to lower immigration administratively, are resulting in lowering the number of Muslims coming to the U.S. and separating families from their loved ones. 1 year ago, the Supreme Court issued their shameful decision and upheld Muslim Ban 3.0. Today, families continue to be separated and lives are uprooted. Today's exhibit shows the resilience of impacted communities and the powerful unity of our communities in fighting this ban. We will continue to challenge this discriminatory policy and fight alongside our Muslim brothers and sisters and other impacted communities whose constitutional rights are being violated. The struggle for justice has never been easy, but together we will continue to fight to repeal the ban, counter white supremacy, and build an inclusive and equal America that lives up to the values to which we aspire. Thank you.
Thank you so much to all of our speakers and to all of you for being out here today to commemorate a very painful one-year anniversary. I do want to just note that as we have been standing out here for the last hour, something that is also on many of our minds is the fact that we are anxiously anticipating a landmark Supreme Court decision on the census issue. And I think for many of us, we really see the deeply rooted connection and the vision of exclusion of this administration. So I just want to note that, and also the fact that tonight marks the first presidential candidate primary debate in which many of us we hope and eagerly await to hear candidates talk about their commitment, not just to undoing the ban. I think many of us recognize that as sort of the low-hanging fruit, absolute first day action that any future president should take, but really to ensure a long-term commitment to making sure that the same anti-Muslim, xenophobic, racist animus that is the driving force behind so many policies, whether it's changing a century-old public charge rule, changing our census applications, changing the ability for taking away the security for people with DACA, TPS, deferred enforced departure. All of these policies are really rooted in the same vision of exclusion and a desire to change the demographics of this country. So I hope that you will take an opportunity to ask questions of our brilliant and dedicated speakers, and thank you for being here, and we'll continue to fight the ban. There are going to be more opportunities coming up with Congress. We look forward to an oversight hearing demanding answers from this administration about the harms of the ban, and continuing to get more members of Congress to support the No Ban Act and other legislative efforts to fight the ban. Thank you so much.